Tomi Lahren is a Fox Nation host, and she joins us now. Tomi, I would love for you to address Jen Psaki's comments there. You know, maybe funding police departments is a good idea. What a novel concept that is.
Yeah, I think all Americans are starting to realize, and many of us already did, that defunding the police was a bad idea. But, you know, it really frustrates me when I hear Jen Psaki talk about how the president is committed to refunding police departments and spending more money on police departments and hiring more police officers. It's not enough just to hire more police officers. Let's not forget that the White House, the Democrats, and much of the mainstream media has spent the last 5 years plus demonizing those officers on a daily basis, calling them systemically racist, saying they don't know how to do their job. But now their solution is to not only go after inanimate objects like guns, but also just to hire more officers. Well, how are you going to hire more officers when you've demoralized them and you've de-incentivized becoming an officer for the better part of the last 5 years? That's not enough. They need to send a message to officers that they are needed, that they do a fantastic job, they are supported in their communities and by the White House, and the mainstream media could chip into that as well and help things. But right now, it's just an empty virtue signal. It's just them trying to move away from their lawless agenda because they know it's not polling well. But in practice, it's not going to do much to help officers or Americans who want to be safe in our own streets and communities.
And that's a darn shame, Tomi. Meantime, a Fox News poll finds voters are reluctant to give Joe Biden a second term. Look at these numbers. If the election were held today, only 36% say they would want to re-elect Joe Biden. 60% say they would vote for someone else. I mean, look, Tomi, Democrats, the White House always rail about democracy. So why doesn't Joe Biden actually help himself by engaging in actual democracy? And by that, I mean, you know, working with Republicans to help the country. Why does he remain so self-destructive by attaching himself to the progressives?
Well, listen, he just told us last week that he doesn't care about polls, so I'm not sure that he really cares about his re-election chances. And quite frankly, I don't care about his re-election chances. I don't think he has a chance. I'm far more concerned about the next several years and the irreparable damage that could be done to our nation under a President Biden who's ever controlling his teleprompter and his puppet strings. But I think the way that we fix this, not only in November midterms, which are going to be critically important, but we also need to send a message to the Democrat Party that the American people do want bipartisanship. We are sick of the woke politicians, but more importantly, we are sick of their agenda. Now, I think the Democrats are going to throw Joe Biden under the bus well before 2024. They're already starting to do it. You see Stacey Abrams and others doing just that. So I'm not worried about a President Biden. I'm far more worried about the agenda that Democrats are still beholden to, and they're still pushing. They're not doing anything to change that agenda. So just changing the man in the White House or changing the vice president isn't going to be enough. Democrats need to know we want more moderates like Joe Manchin or Kyrsten Sinema. That's what the American people want, not this wokeism, not this squad leadership, and not this radical progressivism we're seeing from their party now.
You know, Tomi, according to a recent Fox News poll, inflation, #1 issue among Americans. Crime is the second most concerning issue among Americans across the country. With that in mind, are you surprised that President Biden hasn't made a speech on this issue and spoken out more forcefully on it? About 15 seconds to you.
Listen, I think it's a lose-lose for him to speak out about it because he doesn't have a plan to address it. And we still have a Democrat Party and a White House that's beholden to radical groups like BLM. So he doesn't want to upset the woke activist base that he believes that he has. So he's not going to speak out about crime and lawlessness. Yeah. And it's going to be up to the Republicans. And luckily, we're going to do just that.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.